A broken man who destroyed 12 lives meets a 7-year-old girl with an impossible gift, and she holds the one truth that could save them both. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Rousseau's, Boston's most exclusive restaurant, where men in $1,000 suits made deals that shaped the city's skyline. Marcus Ashford sat alone at the bar, his untouched whiskey creating a perfect ring of condensation on the mahogany surface. His hands that once sketched buildings that kissed the clouds, trembled as he raised the glass to his lips. He didn't drink. He never drank any more. The glass returned to its ring, and Marcus stared at his reflection in the amber liquid. 30 years old, and he looked 50. The media had done that. The lawsuits had done that. The 12 coffins had done that. Especially the smallest one. Mr. Ashford, the maitre d', appeared at his elbow, discomfort written across his face. "I'm afraid we've received complaints. Perhaps it would be best if you—" "I'm leaving." Marcus stood, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound that made everyone turn. He recognized their expressions: disgust, fear. The architect of death, they called him, the man who built a green tomb. He was halfway to the door when she appeared. A tiny figure in a soaked, threadbare coat materialized in front of him, her brown hair plastered to her skull, water pooling beneath her worn sneakers on the pristine floor. 7 years old, maybe 8. Her enormous grey eyes locked onto his face with an intensity that froze him mid-step. "You're Marcus Ashford," she said. Not a question. A statement of absolute certainty. Security was already moving. "How did you get in here?" the maitre d' demanded, reaching for the child. The girl didn't flinch. "I need you to look at my drawings." Marcus felt something crack in his chest. "Kid, I don't—" "Please!" Her small hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Her skin was ice cold. "You're the only one who can understand. My grandpa said if anything happened to him, I should find you. He said you would know what the drawings mean." The restaurant had gone completely silent. Every eye was on them, the disgraced architect and the dripping street child. Marcus tried to pull away, but her grip tightened. "I don't work anymore," he said, his voice rough. "Find someone else." "There is no one else." Her voice dropped to a whisper, but somehow it cut through every other sound in the room. "They killed him because of what he knew, and what he knew is in here." She touched her temple with her free hand. "I see it all, Mr. Ashford. Every line, every measurement, every lie." Marcus's breath caught. "What did you say?" "The Evergreen Tower." Those 3 words fell like stones into still water. "It wasn't your fault." The world tilted. Marcus's knees buckled, and he grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. The Evergreen Tower. The sustainable luxury high-rise that had collapsed during its grand opening gala. 12 dead, including his wife Sarah and their unborn daughter. His design, his specifications, his name on every blueprint, his fault. "Security!" someone shouted. But Marcus was staring at the girl's face, at the absolute certainty in her eyes, at the way she looked at him, like she could see straight through to the broken architecture of his soul. "What's your name?" he heard himself ask. "Madison." She reached into her coat and pulled out a rolled piece of paper, protected by a plastic bag. "Look." His hands moved without permission, taking the paper, unrolling it on the nearest table. Diners scrambled back, offended and alarmed. Marcus didn't notice. He was staring at the drawing. It was the Evergreen Tower, every detail perfect, every measurement exact, but overlaid in red pencil were annotations he'd never made, material specifications that weren't his, structural modifications he'd never approved. And in the corner, in a child's careful handwriting, what they built versus what you designed. "How did you—" Marcus's voice broke. "This is impossible." "I remember everything I see," Madison said simply. "Grandpa showed me the real plans before they took them. Before they made him disappear, he said you were innocent. He said the truth was in the numbers, and I'm good with numbers." Tears were streaming down Marcus's face, hot against his cold skin. For 3 years, he'd believed he was a murderer. For 3 years, he'd wished he'd been in that building instead of running late, instead of being stuck in traffic, instead of surviving. "Sir, you need to leave, now." Security had arrived, 2 massive men reaching for Madison. Something shifted in Marcus Ashford's chest, something that had been dead since the day he identified Sarah's body, since the day he learned their daughter would have been a girl, would have had Sarah's eyes, would have been 3 years old now if he hadn't— "Don't touch her." His voice came out low and dangerous. "She's with me." The security guard blinked. "Mr. Ashford, this child is under my protection." Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "I'm calling my lawyer and a car, and then we're leaving together." He looked down at Madison, really looked at her, soaked through, shivering, alone. "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday, maybe." Something in Marcus's chest that had been frozen for 3 years began, impossibly, to crack. The emergency room lights were too bright, too harsh. Marcus sat in the plastic chair, Madison curled on the bed beside him, finally dry and warm in hospital scrubs, 3 sizes too big. The doctor had just left after confirming what Marcus already knew: malnutrition, exhaustion, early stages of pneumonia. "You should have taken her to a regular clinic," his lawyer James muttered. "This is going to be all over the news by morning. Disgraced architect rescues mystery child." Do you have any idea what this looks like?" "I don't care what it looks like," Marcus said quietly, watching Madison's chest rise and fall. She'd fallen asleep the moment she'd felt safe, her small hand still clutching the plastic-wrapped drawing. "Marcus?" James sat down beside him. "You can't save everyone, especially not now. You're barely holding on yourself. Her grandfather was an inspector." Marcus unrolled the drawing again, spreading it across his knees. "Look at this, James. Really look." James pulled out his reading glasses, studying the paper in the fluorescent light. His face went progressively paler. "These specifications. If this is accurate, it's accurate. I know my own work." Marcus's finger traced the red annotations. Every single structural element was changed. The sustainable materials I specified: bamboo composite beams, recycled steel, low-carbon concrete, all replaced with the cheapest possible alternatives. The load-bearing calculations were completely ignored. But the inspections passed. Everything was signed off by her grandfather. Marcus looked at Madison's sleeping face. "Who conveniently committed suicide 3 days before the collapse, jumped from his apartment, no note, no witnesses." "Marcus, you're talking about murder, about a conspiracy worth—" James did rapid calculations on his phone. "At least $180 million in material substitution fraud. I'm talking about 12 people who died because someone decided profit was more important than safety." Marcus's voice cracked. "I'm talking about my wife, my daughter. About 3 years of thinking I killed them." Madison stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Mr. Ashford, I'm here." He found himself taking her hand without thinking. "How are you feeling?" "Warm." She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "I haven't been warm in so long." "How long have you been on the streets?" The smile faded. "Since Grandpa died. They said I had to go into the system, but I heard them talking. The same people who hurt Grandpa were looking for me, looking for what I knew, so I ran." Her grey eyes met his. "I've been looking for you for 6 months. I finally found your photo in an old magazine at the library." 6 months. This child had survived on the streets for 6 months, all to find him. "Why?" Marcus whispered. "Why risk everything to find me?" Madison's grip tightened on his hand. "Because Grandpa said you were a good man. He said you cared about making buildings that helped the earth. He said you would understand that truth matters more than anything." Tears welled in her eyes. "And because you lost people too, I thought maybe we could be sad together, and maybe being sad together would hurt less." Marcus Ashford hadn't cried in 3 years. He'd been too angry, too broken, too convinced he deserved every ounce of pain. But something in this child's words, in her impossible wisdom, in the way she looked at him like he might still be worth saving, he broke. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, pulling her into his arms. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there. I'm so sorry I didn't stop it. I'm so sorry." "It wasn't your fault," Madison whispered against his chest, her own tears soaking through his shirt. "I can prove it, Mr. Ashford. I can prove you didn't kill anyone. But I need your help. I need you to believe me." James cleared his throat. "Marcus, this is impossible?" Marcus pulled back, wiping his eyes. 3 years ago I would have agreed, but I just watched a 7-year-old girl recreate my entire design from memory, including modifications that were never made public. I'm done with possible and impossible. I'm ready to start with true and false." He looked at Madison, really looked at her, saw past the dirty coat and the hollow cheeks to the brilliant, terrified, brave child underneath, saw the gift she carried, a gift that could destroy the people who had taken everything from both of them. "Can you draw it again?" he asked. "The whole building with all the changes?" Madison nodded, her eyes suddenly bright with purpose. "I can draw anything I've ever seen, exactly, every detail, every measurement. Grandpa showed me 17 different documents before they came for him. I remember all of them. 17 documents that prove fraud, 17 documents that prove murder." Madison's voice was steady now, filled with a quiet strength that made her seem much older than 7. "They didn't just change your building, Mr. Ashford. They made sure it would fall. They made sure people would die, because dead people don't ask questions about missing money." Marcus felt the truth of it settle into his bones. The Evergreen Tower hadn't just failed. It had been designed to fail, and Sarah, his Sarah with her laugh like wind chimes and her hands always warm even in winter, she hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered. "James," Marcus said, his voice steady for the first time in 3 years, "I need you to do something for me." "What?" "Find out who's been trying to find Madison. Then find out who benefits if the truth about the Evergreen Tower stays buried." He stood, still holding Madison's hand. "Because tomorrow we're digging everything up. Marcus, you don't have custody. You can't just take her, then get me emergency custody. Tonight. Tell them she's a material witness in a murder investigation. Tell them she's in danger. Tell them whatever you need to tell them." Marcus looked down at Madison. "But I'm not letting her out of my sight until this is finished." Madison squeezed his hand. "Promise." And Marcus Ashford, who hadn't made a promise to anyone since the day he promised to love Sarah until death did them part, who had learned that promises were just pretty lies people told before life ripped everything away. "I promise," he said, and meant it. The judge granted emergency protective custody at 2 in the morning. By dawn, Marcus and Madison were driving through the gates of his property in Lincoln, 15 miles from Boston. The house, a modernist masterpiece of reclaimed wood and solar glass that Marcus had designed as a wedding present for Sarah, sat dark and silent among the trees. "It's beautiful," Madison whispered, pressing her face to the car window. Marcus hadn't been back in 3 years. After the collapse, he'd moved into a soulless apartment downtown, unable to face the home he'd built for a future that no longer existed. But looking at it now, through Madison's eyes, he saw what he'd forgotten. Hope. He'd built this house out of hope. "Come on," he said, unlocking the front door. "Let's get you settled." The interior was exactly as he'd left it. Dust-covered furniture, photographs turned face down, Sarah's garden designs still pinned to the wall in the kitchen. Madison moved through the space with quiet wonder, her fingers trailing over surfaces, her photographic memory no doubt cataloguing every detail. "You really loved her," she said, stopping in front of a wedding photo Marcus hadn't had the courage to remove. "More than anything. She was pretty, and she looks kind." Madison tilted her head. "What was her name?" "Sarah," Marcus's voice caught. "Sarah Elizabeth Chen. She was an environmental scientist. We met at a green building conference. She thought my sustainable designs were naive, and I thought her carbon calculations were pessimistic. We argued for 3 hours straight." He smiled despite himself. "I proposed 2 months later." "Did she say yes?" "She said, 'Only if you promise to keep arguing with me for the rest of our lives.'" Marcus touched the frame. "We had 6 years. It wasn't nearly enough." Madison was quiet for a moment. Then, "Grandpa used to say that love doesn't measure itself in years. It measures itself in moments, and some people get more love in 6 years than others get in 60. Your grandfather sounds like he was a wise man. He was. Her voice went soft. He taught me everything, how to draw, how to remember, how to see what other people miss. He said my brain was a gift, and gifts should be used to help people. And now you're using it to help me. We're helping each other. Madison looked up at him with those unsettlingly adult eyes. You needed someone to prove you weren't a monster. I needed someone to believe I'm not crazy. We're a good team. Marcus felt something shift in his chest again, something that felt dangerously close to purpose. Yeah, he said, I think we might be. He showed her to the guest room. Sarah had designed it as a future nursery, soft yellows and whites, windows facing the sunrise. Madison stood in the doorway, trembling. What's wrong? Marcus asked. I haven't slept in a real bed in 6 months, she whispered. What if I forget how? Then we'll remember together. Marcus pulled back the covers, finding clean sheets still in the closet. And if you have bad dreams, I'm just across the hall. Deal. Deal. He left her door cracked open, then went to his own room. The room he'd shared with Sarah, now a mausoleum of dust and darkness. He opened the windows, letting in the cold November air, breathing deeply for the first time in years. His phone buzzed. James. I found something, his lawyer said without preamble. Madison's grandfather was Thomas Chen. Patricia Chen's father. Marcus froze. Patricia Chen? My old senior associate? The same. She worked with you for 4 years before the collapse. She was the one who managed the contractor relationships on the Evergreen Tower. The world tilted again. Patricia. Brilliant, ambitious Patricia, who had left his firm 6 months before the collapse to start her own practice. Patricia, who had sent a single short email after Sarah's death. I'm sorry for your loss. James, are you telling me? I'm telling you that Patricia Chen's father was the chief building inspector on the Evergreen Tower project. And I'm telling you that 3 days after his death, Patricia signed a $10 million contract with Thornton Construction to design their new corporate headquarters. Thornton Construction, the contractor on the Evergreen Tower. The contractor who had... Oh, God, Marcus breathed. There's more. Thornton Construction is owned by Victoria Thornton. She also sits on the board of directors for the Massachusetts Building Commission. She's the one who revoked your architecture license. James paused. Marcus, if what Madison remembers is true, we're talking about a conspiracy that goes straight to the top of Boston's construction industry. Marcus looked toward Madison's room, where a 7-year-old girl slept, carrying in her perfect memory the proof that could bring down an empire built on 12 bodies. Then we'd better make sure we're very, very careful, Marcus said, because if they killed Thomas Chen to keep him quiet, they won't hesitate to kill again. What do you need me to do? Get me copies of every document that was filed for the Evergreen Tower, every inspection report, every material order, every change request. If Madison is going to draw what she remembers, I need to be able to verify it against the official record. That could take weeks. Then start now. Marcus ended the call and walked back to Madison's doorway, watching her sleep. Her small chest rose and fell steadily, peacefully, trustingly. For 3 years, he'd wanted only to disappear, to cease existing, to join Sarah in whatever came after. But now, looking at this impossible child with her impossible gift, Marcus Ashford felt something he thought had died with his wife. He felt needed, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to keep breathing for. Morning arrived with sunshine that cut through the dusty windows like accusations. Marcus woke to the smell of burning toast and childish cursing. He found Madison in the kitchen, standing on a chair, waving a dish towel at the smoke detector. I'm sorry, she said when she saw him. I was trying to make breakfast like a thank you, but I don't really know how cooking works, and... Madison, he gently took the towel. It's okay, I appreciate the thought. I ruined your toaster. It was already ruined. Marcus opened windows, clearing the smoke. Sarah was the cook. I'm barely functional with a microwave. So we're both disasters in the kitchen. Absolutely catastrophic. He found cereal in the pantry, miraculously unexpired. But we can handle cereal, probably. They ate together at the table, Madison's legs swinging several inches off the floor. In the morning light, Marcus could see details he'd missed last night. A scar on her forearm, shadows under her eyes that spoke of nightmares, the way she ate with focused intensity, like someone who never knew when the next meal might come. "Madison," he said carefully, "what happened after your grandfather died? Where was your grandmother? Your parents?" Her spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "Grandma died when I was 4. Cancer. My mum, I never met my mum. Grandpa said she was sick in her head, and she left when I was a baby. He tried to find her, but she didn't want to be found." She took another bite. "It was always just Grandpa and me. He said I was his miracle, his second chance. And no other family? Aunt Patricia. But she never visited. Grandpa said she was too busy becoming important." Madison's voice held no judgment, just fact. "When Grandpa died, she didn't even come to identify his body. Just sent lawyers to put me in foster care." "Patricia," Marcus felt anger kindle in his gut. "So your own aunt abandoned you? She was probably scared." Madison said it so simply, so matter-of-factly. "Grandpa said fear makes people do terrible things. He said the people who changed your building were so scared of losing money that they forgot to be scared of losing themselves." Out of the mouths of babes, Marcus thought. "Your grandfather sounds like he was an extraordinary man." "He was my hero." Tears welled in Madison's eyes. "He taught me that seeing things clearly is a superpower, but only if you're brave enough to tell the truth about what you see, even when the truth is scary." "Is that why you came to find me? Because you're brave enough to tell the truth?" "I came to find you because Grandpa's last words were, 'Find Marcus Ashford.'" Madison's voice dropped to a whisper. "They pushed him, Mr. Ashford. I know everyone says he jumped, but Grandpa would never. He promised he would never leave me. And Grandpa never broke promises. Madison, I was hiding in the closet that night. I heard men's voices. I heard Grandpa say, 'You'll never get away with this.' I heard furniture breaking. I heard—" She choked on the words. "I heard him scream, and then it was quiet." Marcus reached across the table, taking her small hands in his. "Why didn't you tell the police?" "I tried, but when I told the social worker, she said I was traumatized and confused. She said I was making up stories because I couldn't accept that Grandpa was gone." Madison's tears fell freely now. "No one believed me. No one would listen. So I ran before they could put me somewhere I couldn't escape from, before the bad men could find me. I believe you," Marcus said fiercely. "I believe every word." "Really? Really? And we're going to prove it. Together." He squeezed her hands gently. "But Madison, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we really dig into what happened, it's going to be dangerous. The people who hurt your grandfather won't want the truth to come out. I'm not scared of danger." Madison lifted her chin. "I'm scared of forgetting. I'm scared of losing what Grandpa died to protect. I'm scared that if we don't do this, everything he was will just disappear." Marcus saw himself reflected in her determination. Hadn't he spent 3 years doing exactly that? Disappearing. Letting grief and guilt erase everything he'd been before the collapse. "Okay," he said, "then we start today. Can you draw everything your grandfather showed you?" Madison's eyes lit up. "All of it? Every document? Every specification? Every note?" Marcus stood, pulling out his old drafting table from storage. "And I'll verify every detail against the official records. We're going to build a case so airtight that even Victoria Thornton can't squirm out of it." "Who's Victoria Thornton?" "The woman who owns the construction company that built the Evergreen Tower." Marcus's jaw tightened. "And if I'm right, the woman who ordered your grandfather's murder." Madison climbed onto the tall stool at the drafting table, looking tiny and determined. "Then let's make Grandpa proud." For the next 6 hours, Marcus watched Madison work. Her small hands moved across the paper with absolute confidence, reproducing blueprint after blueprint with photographic precision. Every measurement exact, every notation perfect, every detail that Marcus checked against the official records, revealing discrepancies that made his blood run cold. They changed everything, he muttered, comparing Madison's drawings to the approved plans. Every single sustainable material I specified was swapped for conventional alternatives. The bamboo composite I designed for the main support beams replaced with standard timber, the recycled steel replaced with new steel, the low-carbon concrete replaced with traditional high-carbon mix. But wouldn't that make the building stronger? Madison asked, not looking up from her drawing. Newer materials are usually better, right? Not when you keep the same load calculations. Marcus pulled up his original structural analysis on his laptop. I designed the evergreen tower based on specific material properties. Bamboo composite has different stress tolerances than timber. When they swapped materials without adjusting the engineering, they fundamentally compromised the building's integrity. So it was like building a bridge for small cars, but then letting trucks cross it. Exactly. Marcus felt a surge of respect for her quick mind. And trucks break bridges. Madison finished another drawing, this one showing material delivery receipts. Grandpa showed me these 3 days before he died. He said the numbers didn't match. The construction company ordered cheap materials but billed for expensive ones. The difference was, she paused, calculating in her head, $182,400,000. $182 million. Marcus felt sick. They pocketed nearly $200 million and built a death trap instead of the sustainable building I designed. And when Grandpa tried to stop the final inspection, they stopped him instead. Madison's voice was small. Did your wife die because of the money? Marcus had to close his eyes against the wave of grief and rage. Yes. Sarah died because someone decided $200 million was worth more than 12 human lives. I'm sorry, Madison whispered. I'm so sorry you lost her. I'm sorry you lost your grandfather. They sat in shared sorrow for a moment, two people bonded by loss and the terrible clarity of injustice. Then Madison picked up her pencil again. So, let's make them pay. They worked until darkness fell, until Madison's hand cramped and her eyes grew heavy. Marcus ordered pizza, the first real meal he'd eaten in months, and they ate on the floor surrounded by drawings that told a story of systematic fraud and deliberate murder. Tomorrow, Marcus said, we need to make copies of everything, store them somewhere safe. If anything happens, nothing will happen to you, Madison said fiercely. I just found you. You don't get to disappear. Madison, promise me. She grabbed his hand. Promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you won't do anything that might get you hurt, because I can't lose another person I love. The word hung in the air between them. Love. This child, who had known him for barely 24 hours, was already using words like love, and the terrifying thing was, Marcus felt it too, this fierce, protective feeling, this sense that Madison's well-being mattered more than his own. This is what being a father feels like, he thought, this terror and joy and desperate hope. I promise, he said, we stick together, no matter what. Madison fell asleep on the couch, her head on his shoulder, surrounded by evidence of a conspiracy that had stolen everything from both of them. Marcus covered her with a blanket and stayed awake, watching over her, feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years, purpose, protection, a reason to survive. And somewhere in the darkness, people who had killed 12 people to protect a fortune were beginning to realize that their secrets were no longer safe. The next morning brought a visitor. Marcus was making actual successful toast when the doorbell rang. Madison tensed immediately, her eyes going wide with fear. Stay here, Marcus said, moving to the door. Through the window he saw a woman he hadn't seen in 3 years. Patricia Chen stood on his doorstep, immaculate in a designer suit, her face carefully neutral. Marcus's hand froze on the doorknob. Hello, Marcus, she said, when he finally opened the door. It's been a long time. Patricia. He kept his body blocking the entrance, suddenly aware of Madison hiding in the kitchen. What are you doing here? I heard you had a visitor, a young visitor. Patricia's eyes were sharp, searching. I thought I should check on family matters personally. Family matters? Marcus felt rage building in his chest. You mean your niece, the one you abandoned to foster care after your father's death? A muscle twitched in Patricia's jaw. I see she's been telling stories. I see you've been avoiding responsibility. Marcus, you don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me. He crossed his arms. Explain how Thomas Chen's daughter didn't even identify his body. Explain how you took a $10 million contract from Thornton Construction days after your father died. Explain how you're standing on my doorstep instead of fighting for custody of your own niece. Patricia's composure cracked, just for a moment. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Then enlighten me. She glanced around, suddenly nervous. Not here, not now. If I'm seen talking to you. She stopped, fear flashing across her face. If you're seen talking to me, what? Victoria Thornton gets upset. Marcus leaned in. Tell me something, Patricia. Did you know, when you managed the contractor relationships, did you know they were swapping materials? Marcus, did you know that the building would collapse? Did you know that Sarah would die? Stop. Patricia's voice broke. Just stop. You think I wanted any of this? You think I don't wake up every night seeing my father's face, hearing his voice telling me to be brave, to tell the truth? Tears streamed down her face. I'm a coward, Marcus. I chose my career over my father's life. I chose money over justice, and I've had to live with that every single day. Marcus stared at her, seeing for the first time the guilt that had aged her face, the shadows under her eyes that matched his own. Then help us, he said quietly. Help us make it right. I can't. They'll kill me. They'll kill Madison if we don't stop them. Marcus stepped aside, letting Patricia see into the kitchen where Madison stood, small and scared and impossibly brave. Patricia's face crumpled when she saw her niece. Oh God, Madison, baby, I'm so sorry. Don't. Madison's voice was steady, hard. You don't get to call me baby. You don't get to cry. You left me. You left Grandpa. You chose the bad people. I was scared. So was I. But I ran toward the truth instead of away from it. Madison lifted her chin. Grandpa always said Chen women were brave, but I guess he was wrong about you. The words hit Patricia like physical blows. She sank onto the doorstep, sobbing. He was so proud of you. The night he died, he called me. He said, Patricia, if anything happens to me, take care of Madison. She's special. She sees what others miss. She'll need someone to believe in her. And her voice broke. I hung up on him. I told him he was being paranoid. I told him to stop making trouble. And 12 hours later, he was dead, Marcus finished. Patricia nodded, broken. They called me the next morning. Victoria Thornton herself. She said there had been an unfortunate accident. She said she hoped I would be sensible. She said opportunities for smart architects were endless, but they required discretion. She looked up at Marcus with devastated eyes. She was offering me a fortune to stay quiet about my father's murder. And you took it. I took it. Because I'm weak. Because I was terrified. Because I thought... She laughed bitterly. I thought I could live with the guilt. I thought money would make it bearable. Does it? Madison asked quietly. No. Patricia met her niece's eyes. It's a prison. Every building I design feels like I'm building on my father's grave. Every success feels like blood money. Every night I dream he's falling, and I can't catch him. Marcus watched this broken woman, understanding suddenly that there were many kinds of victims in this conspiracy. Patricia had survived physically, but she died inside just as surely as Thomas Chen had died on the pavement. So help us, he said again. Tell us everything you know. Testify. Be the daughter Thomas Chen believed you could be. Patricia wiped her eyes, something hardening in her face. If I testify, I'll lose everything. My firm, my reputation. I could go to prison for obstruction of justice. And if you don't testify, more people will die. Marcus crouched down to her level. Because Victoria Thornton is still building, still cutting corners, still choosing profit over safety. How many more Sarah Ashfords have to die before you find your courage? The words hung in the air like an indictment. Patricia looked at Madison, at the niece she'd abandoned, at the child who carried her father's gift of seeing clearly. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "Thinking killed your father," Madison said. "Doing saves people." Patricia flinched. "When did you get so wise?" "Grandpa taught me." Madison's voice softened just slightly. "He said everyone makes mistakes, but brave people fix them. Are you brave, Aunt Patricia?" It was a challenge, a plea, a last chance at redemption. Patricia stood, straightening her suit, her architect's mask sliding back into place. "I need time." "We don't have time." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing her photos of Madison's drawings. "We have evidence. We have proof. All we need is someone on the inside to verify it, someone who knows how the fraud was executed." Patricia's eyes widened as she scrolled through the images. "She drew these, all of these?" "I remember everything," Madison said simply. "Grandpa showed me, and now I'm showing the world. Do you understand what you're asking of me?" Patricia looked at Marcus desperately. Victoria Thornton doesn't just own a construction company. She owns judges, police commissioners, half the city council. If I go against her, if you don't go against her, you're complicit in murder." Marcus's voice was implacable. "You get to choose, Patricia. Be the architect your father raised, or be the coward Victoria Thornton bought. But choose fast, because with or without you, we're taking her down." Patricia stood frozen, war visible on her face. Then she looked at Madison, really looked at her, and something shifted. "I need 48 hours, she said. "I need to secure my assets, make arrangements, and I need guarantees of witness protection. James can arrange that. And Marcus," Patricia's voice shook, "I need you to know, I never stopped being sorry. About Sarah, about the baby, about all of it." "Being sorry doesn't bring her back," Marcus said flatly, "but helping us might prevent the next tragedy. That's the only redemption available to either of us." Patricia nodded, took one last look at Madison, and left. Madison watched her aunt's car disappear down the driveway. "She won't help. You don't know that." "Yes, I do. I remember Grandpa's face when he talked about her. He loved her so much, and it broke his heart that she chose comfort over courage." Madison turned to Marcus, her grey eyes ancient in her young face. "People don't change, Mr. Ashford. Not really. They just get better at hiding what they always were." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to believe that redemption was possible, that Patricia would find her courage, that people could choose differently. But he'd spent 3 years learning that the world was crueler and darker than his optimistic younger self had ever imagined. "Then we do this without her," he said. "We take what you remember, and we build a case so strong that even Victoria Thornton's money can't tear it down." Madison smiled, fierce and determined. "Grandpa would like you." "Yeah? Yeah. He always said the best architects build structures that last, not just buildings, ideas, justice, truth." She took Marcus's hand. "Let's build something that lasts forever." And in that moment, Marcus Ashford understood what he'd been missing for 3 years. Not just Sarah, not just his career, not just his faith in his own judgment. He'd been missing purpose. But now, looking at this 7-year-old girl with her photographic memory and her unshakable moral clarity, he had it again. He had something worth building, something worth fighting for, something worth staying alive for. They spent the next 2 days in focused intensity. Marcus reached out to every contact he still had, journalists who had covered the collapse, engineers who had questioned the official investigation, families of the victims who still demanded answers. Madison drew until her fingers ached, reproducing every document her grandfather had shown her in the 3 days before his death. The evidence was damning. Material substitutions totaling $182 million, forged inspection reports, falsified stress tests, and underneath it all, a pattern of deliberate sabotage designed to make the Evergreen Tower fail spectacularly enough to bury questions in grief and chaos. "They wanted it to collapse," Marcus said, reviewing Madison's latest drawings. "But why? Why not just pocket the money and hope the building held? Insurance, Madison said, not looking up from her work. Grandpa explained it to me. If the building collapsed during construction, Thornton Construction would have to pay penalties. But if it collapsed after the final inspection, after it was officially approved and occupied, then it's a design failure, Marcus finished, feeling sick. Not a construction failure. The architect's liability, not the contractor's. And your insurance company pays out while Thornton Construction keeps the fraud money and faces no penalties. Madison's voice was matter-of-fact, reciting information her grandfather had carefully explained. Grandpa said it was brilliant, in an evil way. Brilliant enough to kill 12 people and frame me for it. Marcus stood, pacing. So Victoria Thornton embezzled nearly $200 million, deliberately built a structurally unsound building, ensured it would fail after final inspection, murdered the inspector who discovered the fraud, and let me take the blame for everything. And made a fortune doing it, Madison added, because after the collapse, the city needed someone to rebuild. Guess who got all the major contracts? Marcus pulled up the records on his laptop, feeling his blood run cold. In the 3 years since the Evergreen Tower collapse, Thornton Construction had won city contracts totaling over $400 million. She turned murder into a business opportunity, he whispered. Grandpa said some people see tragedies and think, how can I help? Other people see tragedies and think, how can I profit? Madison finally looked up from her drawing. Victoria Thornton is the second kind. The doorbell rang. Marcus tensed, moving automatically to put himself between Madison and the door. Through the window, he saw James, his lawyer. It's okay, Marcus said, letting him in. It's just James. But James's face was ashen, and he was holding a newspaper. You need to see this, he said, spreading the paper on the table. The headline screamed, Disgraced Architect Kidnaps Child Witness. Below it, a photo of Marcus and Madison leaving the hospital, and a quote from an unnamed source. Marcus Ashford, whose negligent design killed 12 people including his own wife, has kidnapped 7-year-old Madison Chen. The child's family is desperate for her safe return. That's a lie, Madison said flatly. I don't have family, only Aunt Patricia, and she doesn't want me. Patricia is the unnamed source, James said quietly. She went to the media yesterday, claimed you manipulated Madison into making false accusations to clear your name. She's calling for your arrest. Marcus felt the world tilt. She sold us out. Worse, she's claiming Madison is mentally unstable and that you're exploiting a vulnerable child's fantasy to escape responsibility for the collapse. James pulled out his phone, showing texts. I've had 3 calls from Child Protective Services. They're coming with police this afternoon to remove Madison from your custody. No. Madison's voice was small but fierce. No, they can't. Mr. Ashford didn't kidnap me. He saved me. I know that. You know that, but, James gestured at the newspaper, the city sees a disgraced architect with a history of causing death suddenly in possession of a child who conveniently claims to have evidence clearing his name. It looks bad, Marcus. I don't care how it looks. I care about the truth. The truth is, we're out of time. James began gathering Madison's drawings. We need to move fast. I'm going straight to the FBI with this evidence. If we can get federal investigators involved before CPS takes Madison, they'll separate us, Madison said, fear creeping into her voice. If I go into custody, the bad people will find me, just like they found Grandpa. Marcus knelt in front of her, taking her shoulders gently. Listen to me. I won't let that happen, I promise. You can't promise that. You're not even my real family. Then we make it real. The words came out before Marcus fully understood what he was saying. We make it legal. James, can I file for emergency adoption? Marcus, that takes time. Background checks, home studies. How much time before CPS gets here? James checked his watch. 2 hours, maybe 3. Then we have 2 hours to make this official. Marcus stood, resolve hardening in his chest. File whatever paperwork you need to file. Emergency guardianship, foster placement, whatever gets Madison legally under my protection, now. Even if I file, it won't be processed in time. But it shows intent. It shows this isn't kidnapping. It shows I'm trying to do this the right way." Marcus looked at Madison. "If you want this, if you want me to be—" "Yes," Madison said immediately. "Yes, I want you. I want to stay here. I want—" Her voice broke. "I want a home again. A real home. With someone who believes me." Something cracked open in Marcus's chest, something that felt like grief and joy and terror all mixed together. This child, this brave, brilliant, broken child was choosing him, trusting him, believing he could be what she needed. "Then it's decided," he said. "James, file everything, make it legal. And the evidence, the drawings, photograph everything. Multiple copies to multiple locations. If CPS takes Madison, at least the truth survives." They worked frantically. James made calls, filed emergency petitions, pulled strings with every contact he had in family court. Marcus and Madison photographed every drawing, uploaded them to secure servers, sent copies to journalists and lawyers and engineers. By the time the police arrived, they had a legal filing for emergency guardianship pending before a judge, and evidence of the Evergreen Tower fraud distributed to 17 different recipients. "Mr. Ashford," the officer said, "we need to speak with Madison Chen." "She's right here," Marcus said calmly, Madison's hand tight in his. "And she has something to say." Madison stepped forward, her chin up, her voice clear. "My name is Madison Chen. I'm 7 years old. I wasn't kidnapped. Mr. Ashford is trying to adopt me because my grandfather told me to find him if anything happened. And something did happen. My grandfather was murdered to hide the truth about the Evergreen Tower, and I can prove it." The officer blinked, clearly not expecting such a composed statement. "Miss Chen, we've been told you're confused. Traumatized by your grandfather's death?" "I have a photographic memory," Madison interrupted. "I remember every document my grandfather showed me before he died. I can draw them perfectly, every measurement, every material specification, every piece of evidence that proves Thornton Construction committed fraud and murdered 12 people." She pulled out a rolled-up drawing, handing it to the officer. "This is the bill of materials for the Evergreen Tower support columns. See the prices. Thornton Construction billed the city for sustainable bamboo composite at $400 per cubic meter, but they actually use standard timber that costs $75 per cubic meter. The difference across the entire building is $182 million. The officer unrolled the drawing, his eyes widening. "Where did you get this?" "From my memory. My grandfather showed it to me. And 17 other people now have copies, including the FBI. Madison's voice didn't waver. "So if you take me away from Mr. Ashford, if something happens to me, the truth still comes out. The only difference is whether I survive to see justice done." Silence. The officer looked at his partner, at James, at Marcus, at this incredible child who spoke like a prosecutor twice her age. "This is above our pay grade," he said finally. "I need to call my supervisor." He stepped outside. Madison sagged against Marcus, her bravery finally cracking. "Did I do okay?" "You were perfect," Marcus whispered. "So perfect." 20 minutes later, the officers left without Madison. The supervisor had decided that given the pending guardianship filing and the seriousness of Madison's allegations, CPS should wait for a full investigation. It was a temporary reprieve, but it was enough. "We bought ourselves time," James said after the police left. "But Marcus, Victoria Thornton is going to come at you with everything she has. She's already destroyed your reputation. She'll destroy your freedom if she can. Let her try." Marcus looked at Madison, at this child who had brought him back from the edge of giving up. "I've already lost everything that mattered. She can't hurt me more than I've already been hurt, but she can't be allowed to hurt anyone else. So what's the plan?" Marcus pulled up his laptop, opening a file he'd been building for the past 48 hours. "We go public. Not through the media. Victoria owns too many journalists. We go straight to the victims' families, to the engineers who questioned the official investigation, to the city council members who voted against giving Thornton Construction more contracts." He looked at James. and we asked them to stand with us. 12 people died in the Evergreen Tower. It's time their families knew it wasn't an accident. You're starting a war." "No." Marcus squeezed Madison's hand. "I'm finishing one. Victoria Thornton started this war when she decided profit was worth murder. We're just making sure she doesn't win." Over the next week, Marcus and Madison became an unlikely team. She drew, he verified. She remembered, he documented. Together, they built a case that grew stronger with each passing day, and slowly, people began to believe. Sarah's sister, Emily, was the first to reach out. "I never believed you were responsible," she told Marcus over the phone, her voice shaking. "Sarah loved you. She trusted your designs. If she thought there was any danger, she never would have attended that opening." "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect her," Marcus said, old guilt rising. "You were stuck in traffic. You would have died too if you'd been there." Emily's voice softened. "But Marcus, if what this little girl says is true, if Sarah was murdered, I want them to pay. I want them to answer for what they took from us." "They will," Marcus promised. "I swear to you they will." One by one, the families joined them. Michael Torres, whose husband had died on the 73rd floor. Jennifer Lee, whose mother had been touring the sustainable features when the building came down. David Okafor, whose sister had been part of the catering staff. 12 families, 12 voices demanding answers. And at the center of it all, a 7-year-old girl with perfect recall and unshakable courage. "You're like a superhero," Marcus told Madison one night, as they organized yet another stack of evidence. She looked up at him seriously. "Superheroes have powers they were born with. I just have a good memory and a dead grandpa who taught me to pay attention." "Madison, do you think he'd be proud?" she asked quietly. "Grandpa, do you think he'd be proud that I'm doing this?" Marcus pulled her into a hug. "I think he's watching right now, and his heart is bursting with how proud he is. You're exactly the person he raised you to be." "I miss him so much," her voice broke. "I miss him every second of every day." "I know. I miss Sarah too, and our baby, and the life we were supposed to have." Marcus rested his chin on top of her head. "But you know what I think? I think they'd want us to keep living, to keep fighting, to make sure their deaths meant something. So we're fighting for them. We're fighting for everyone who deserves the truth." Madison was quiet for a moment. "Then, Mr. Ashford, can I call you Dad?" Marcus's breath caught. "You want to? You're the only person who's protected me since Grandpa died. You're the only person who believes me. You're the only person who makes me feel safe." She looked up at him with those 2 old eyes. "That's what dads do, right?" "Yeah," Marcus managed through the lump in his throat. "That's what dads do." "Then can I, even if the adoption isn't final yet?" "Madison Chen," Marcus said, cupping her face in his hands. "You can call me whatever you want, but I'd be honored if you called me Dad." She smiled, and it was like sunrise after the longest night. "Okay, Dad." And just like that, Marcus Ashford's heart, which had been frozen for 3 years, which had felt nothing but pain and guilt and grief, began to beat again. The hearing came faster than expected. Victoria Thornton, sensing the tide turning, moved to have Marcus arrested for kidnapping and evidence tampering. The judge, to her credit, wanted to hear both sides. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with James, Madison beside him in a new dress that Emily had bought. Across the aisle, Victoria Thornton sat with her team of lawyers, her expression cold and confident. "Your Honor," Victoria's lead attorney began, "we're here because Marcus Ashford, a disgraced architect whose negligence killed 12 people, has kidnapped a vulnerable child and coerced her into fabricating evidence to absolve him of responsibility. This is a clear case of witness tampering and child exploitation." "That's not true." Madison stood up, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "Mr. Ashford didn't kidnap me. I found him. I asked for his help. And I'm not making anything up. I have a photographic memory. I remember every single document my grandfather showed me before he was murdered." "Madison," the judge started. "Please, Your Honor, please let me show you." Madison pulled out her portfolio of drawings. I can prove everything, every specification, every material substitution, every dollar of fraud. My grandfather died protecting this information, and Mr. Ashford is the only person brave enough to believe me." The judge's eyes softened. "Miss Chen, how old are you?" "7. But Grandpa always said age doesn't matter when you're telling the truth." "And you claim to remember documents shown to you months ago?" "Not claim. I do remember them." Madison's voice was steady. "Test me. Show me any blueprint in this courthouse. I'll look at it once and draw it back perfectly." Victoria's attorney laughed. "Your Honor, this is absurd. A 7-year-old child cannot possibly—" "I'll allow it," the judge interrupted. "Bailiff, bring me the courthouse's original architectural plans, the third-floor corridor section." 5 minutes later, Madison stood at a whiteboard, a blueprint pinned beside it. She studied it for exactly 60 seconds. Then, without looking back, she began to draw. Every line appeared in perfect proportion, every measurement exactly correct, every notation precisely placed. When she finished, the drawing was identical to the original. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. "How did you do that?" the judge breathed. "I told you. I remember things I see." Madison turned to Victoria Thornton, her child's voice cutting through the chaos. "And I remember what you did. I remember the material orders you falsified. I remember the inspection reports you forged. I remember my grandfather's face when he realized you were going to kill him to keep him quiet." Victoria stood, her composure cracking. "That child is delusional. She's been coached." "Coached?" Marcus rose, his voice shaking with rage. "My wife died in your building. My unborn daughter died in your building. 10 other innocent people died in your building. And you're calling the one person brave enough to tell the truth delusional? Mr. Ashford, control yourself." "No!" Marcus slammed his hands on the table. "I've been quiet for 3 years. 3 years of thinking I was a murderer. 3 years of wishing I died instead. 3 years of letting you profit from the blood of people I loved. I'm done being quiet." He pulled out his laptop, projecting Madison's drawings onto the courtroom screen. "This is the Evergreen Tower as I designed it. Sustainable materials, innovative engineering, a building that should have stood for 100 years. He clicked to the next image. "This is what Thornton Construction actually built. Substandard materials, compromised structural integrity, a death trap." Click. "Here are the material orders, what was specified versus what was delivered." Click. "Here are the billing statements, what the city paid versus what materials actually cost." Click. "Here is the difference, $182,400,000, embezzled, stolen, converted into blood money." Click. "And here is Thomas Chen's final inspection report, the one he tried to file 3 days before he died. The one that detailed every violation, every substitution, every lie. The one that got him murdered." The courtroom was silent, everyone staring at the screens, at the damning evidence, at the pattern of fraud laid bare. Victoria Thornton's face had gone white. "Your Honor," James stood, "we're not here to defend against kidnapping charges. We're here to expose a conspiracy to commit fraud and murder. Madison Chen isn't a kidnap victim. She's the state's most important witness. And Marcus Ashford isn't a criminal. He's a victim who's finally learning the truth about who really killed his wife." The judge looked at Victoria, at her team of expensive lawyers, at the evidence on the screen. "Ms. Thornton, do you wish to respond to these allegations?" Victoria stood, smoothing her suit, her mask of confidence sliding back into place. "I wish to state for the record that these accusations are slanderous and will be met with legal action. Thornton Construction has an impeccable safety record." 12 dead people would disagree, Madison said quietly, "and we will not be intimidated by the desperate fantasies of a disgraced architect and a traumatized child." "Fantasies?" Marcus pulled out another file. "Then explain why your company has been sued 14 times in the past 5 years for similar material substitution fraud. Explain why 3 of your former employees have come forward claiming they were ordered to falsify inspection reports. Explain why Thomas Chen called the FBI the day before he died. requesting protection for his granddaughter. Victoria's attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, this is turning into a trial for crimes that haven't been charged because you paid off everyone who could charge them," Marcus shot back. "Police commissioners, city council members, judges. How much of that $182 million went to buying silence? These accusations are baseless." "Then sue me," Marcus challenged. "Take me to court. Let's put all of this evidence in front of a jury. Let's let 12 citizens decide if a 7-year-old girl with perfect recall is lying, or if you're a murderer who's been hiding behind money and power." Victoria's composure finally shattered. "You self-righteous. You have no idea what you're playing with. You think the truth matters? You think justice means anything? I own this city. I own the people who could charge me. I own the media that could expose me. You're nothing, Ashford, just a washed-up architect whose wife died because he was too incompetent to design a safe building." The courtroom gasped, but Madison spoke before anyone else could. "My grandpa said people like you always make the same mistake." Her voice was soft, but it carried. "You think power and money make you untouchable. You think you're smarter than everyone else. But you forget that the truth doesn't need power. It just needs one brave person to speak it out loud." She walked up to Victoria Thornton, this tiny 7-year-old girl facing down a woman who controlled millions, and said, "You killed my grandfather. You killed Mr. Ashford's wife and baby. You killed 10 other innocent people, and you're going to pay for it. Not because we're powerful, but because the truth is powerful, and I remember everything." Victoria looked down at Madison, and for just a moment, fear crossed her face. The fear of someone who had built an empire on lies, realizing that a child had the power to bring it all crashing down. "Your Honor," James said into the silence, "we move to dismiss all charges against Marcus Ashford and to grant him emergency custody of Madison Chen. Furthermore, we're filing a formal complaint with the District Attorney's Office requesting investigation into Thornton Construction for fraud, bribery, and conspiracy to commit murder." The judge was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence, studying Madison, studying the rage and grief and desperate hope on Marcus's face. "The kidnapping charges are dismissed," she said finally. "Emergency custody is granted pending full adoption proceedings. As for the criminal allegations," she looked directly at Victoria Thornton, "I'm referring this matter to the federal prosecutor's office. Ms. Thornton, I strongly suggest you secure legal counsel." Victoria stood, her face a mask of fury, and stormed from the courtroom. But as she passed Marcus, she leaned in and whispered, "This isn't over. I will destroy you both." "You already tried," Marcus said quietly. "We're still standing. That should tell you something." The moment the courtroom doors closed, Madison threw herself into Marcus's arms, sobbing. Not tears of fear this time, but of relief, of release, of justice, finally beginning. "We did it," she cried. "Dad, we did it." Marcus held her tight, his own tears flowing freely. "Yeah, kiddo, we did." But he knew Victoria was right about one thing. This wasn't over. The real battle was just beginning. The media firestorm was immediate and brutal. "Murdered for money, the Evergreen Tower conspiracy," screamed the headlines. News crews camped outside Marcus's house. The FBI opened a formal investigation. Thornton Construction stock plummeted, and Victoria Thornton disappeared. "Fled to a non-extradition country," James reported 3 days after the hearing. "Switzerland, we think. She cleaned out her accounts and vanished." Marcus stood at the window, watching Madison play in the garden. The first time she'd felt safe enough to go outside in weeks. So she gets away with it. Not necessarily. The FBI has frozen her assets. They're building a case, and even if she stays gone, Thornton Construction is finished. The board is cooperating, turning over documents. It's all coming out. But she's free. After everything she did, she's drinking wine in the Alps while Sarah is dead. "Marcus, I know." He turned from the window. "I know we won. I know we got justice, or as close to it as we'll get. I know I should be grateful." He gestured to where Madison was carefully examining a rosebush. "And I am grateful. For her. For us. for this second chance. But I wanted her to face what she did. I wanted her to sit in a courtroom and hear every name, every life she destroyed. I wanted her to feel one fraction of the pain she caused. Maybe she does, James said quietly. Maybe running is its own kind of prison, knowing you can never come home, never see your family, never be anything but a fugitive. Marcus wanted to believe that, wanted to think that Victoria Thornton suffered even a fraction of what her victims had suffered. But mostly, he just felt tired. The adoption hearing is next week, James continued. I've expedited everything. Unless you've changed your mind. I haven't. Marcus looked at Madison again, at this brave, brilliant, beautiful child who had given him a reason to keep breathing. She's mine. I'm hers. That's the only thing I'm certain of. Good, because she needs you. I need her too. Marcus smiled, despite himself. More than I ever thought possible. The adoption hearing was simple and perfect. Madison wore her new dress, blue like her eyes, and Marcus wore the suit Sarah had bought him for their anniversary, the one he'd thought he'd never wear again. The judge asked the required questions. Marcus answered truthfully. Madison, when asked if she wanted Marcus Ashford to be her father, said, "More than anything in the whole world. Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I grant this adoption. Madison Chen is now legally Madison Chen Ashford." The judge smiled. "Congratulations, you two." Madison turned to Marcus, tears streaming down her face. "I have a family again." "Yeah," Marcus said, pulling her into his arms. "We both do." They left the courthouse together, father and daughter, two people rebuilt from the wreckage of tragedy into something new and strong and unbreakable. The reporters shouted questions, the cameras flashed, but Marcus just held Madison's hand and walked through it all, focused only on the small person beside him who had saved his life by letting him save hers. That night, they sat together in Sarah's garden, now blooming again after years of neglect. Marcus had hired someone to restore it, to bring back the roses and lavender and sage that his wife had loved. "Do you think they're watching?" Madison asked, looking up at the stars. "Grandpa and your wife?" "I think so. I think they're probably pretty proud of us." "Do you think they knew that we'd find each other?" Marcus considered this. "I think your grandfather knew you'd need someone, and I think Sarah knew I'd need a reason to keep going. Maybe they arranged it somehow. Maybe they're still taking care of us." Madison leaned against him. "I like that idea." "Me too, kiddo. Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching fireflies dance among the roses. And Marcus Ashford, for the first time in 3 years, felt something that he'd thought was lost forever. Peace, not the absence of pain. The pain would always be there, a scar on his soul. But peace in knowing that Sarah's death hadn't been meaningless, that 12 lives had bought justice and truth and the exposure of corruption that might save future lives. And peace in knowing that he wasn't alone anymore. He had Madison, and Madison had him. And that was enough. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the crowd at Madison's middle school science fair, watching her explain her project, a sustainable building model made entirely from recycled materials, to a panel of impressed judges. At 12, she was tall and confident, her grey eyes still holding that same fierce intelligence, but tempered now with the security of being loved. "And this is my dad's original design for the Evergreen Tower," she was saying, pointing to the display. His vision was to create buildings that worked with nature instead of against it. He believed architecture should heal, not harm. She glanced at Marcus, smiled. "He taught me that the best structures aren't just strong, they're honest. Every material serves its purpose. Every beam supports what it's meant to support. No shortcuts, no lies, just good design and integrity." The judges nodded, taking notes. One asked, "And what do you want to be when you grow up?" Madison didn't hesitate. "An architect, like my dad, but I want to focus on redesigning buildings that failed, figuring out what went wrong and how to fix it. I want to make sure what happened to the Evergreen Tower never happens again." "That's quite ambitious." My dad always says the only way to honor the past is to build a better future. Madison's voice was strong, certain. I'm going to build the best future I can. Marcus felt his throat tighten with pride. This girl, his daughter, had taken the worst tragedy of both their lives and transformed it into purpose, into hope. After the fair, they drove to the cemetery. It was their ritual. Once a month, they visited Sarah's grave together. Madison brought flowers. Marcus brought updates on their lives. "Hey, love," he said, kneeling by the headstone. "Madison won first place at the science fair. Again. I think she's going to be better than I ever was." Madison set down the roses, always roses, Sarah's favorite. "Hi, Sarah, I hope you're proud of us. Dad finished his first new design since, an elementary school, all sustainable materials, triple-checked by 5 independent engineers. It's going to be beautiful." Marcus put his arm around her. "We're okay," he told Sarah's grave. "We're more than okay. We're happy. And I think," his voice broke slightly, "I think you'd be happy for us too." They sat in silence for a while, remembering, grieving, but also celebrating the strange and wonderful path that had led them to each other. "Dad?" Madison asked as they walked back to the car. "Do you think you'll ever design another tower?" "Maybe. Someday." Marcus squeezed her hand. "But right now, I'm focused on a different kind of architecture." "What kind?" "Building a family. Building a life. Building a future where a 7-year-old girl with a photographic memory never has to fight corruption alone." He looked down at her. "Turns out, that's the most important thing I've ever designed." Madison grinned. "Even more important than sustainable buildings? Even more important than that." They drove home through the golden afternoon light, past the new memorial park that had been built on the site of the Evergreen Tower. 12 trees, one for each victim, and a plaque that read, "In memory of those lost to greed. May their deaths bring justice and prevent future tragedy." It had been Madison's idea, just like it had been Madison's idea to start a foundation providing free architectural safety audits for low-income housing, just like it had been Madison's idea to testify before Congress about building code reform. She had taken her pain and turned it into purpose, just like she'd taken Marcus's broken pieces and helped him build something whole. "Hey, Dad," she said as they pulled into the driveway. "Yeah? I'm glad Grandpa told me to find you. I'm glad I was brave enough to do it. And I'm glad you were brave enough to believe me." "Me too, Madison. Me too." They went inside together, into the house that had once been a mausoleum of grief, but was now filled with laughter and homework and debate about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. Into a home built not on wood and steel, but on trust and love and the radical choice to keep living even when the world fell apart. Marcus Ashford had lost everything he thought mattered, but in losing it, he'd found something more precious than he'd ever imagined. He'd found his daughter, his purpose, his reason to believe that even in the darkest moments, there was still light worth fighting for. And Madison had lost her grandfather, her innocence, her childhood safety. But she'd found her father, her home, her proof that truth, no matter how small or young or unlikely, could topple empires built on lies. Together, they'd built something that would last, not a building that could crumble, but a family that would endure. And in the end, that was the only architecture that really mattered, the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with friends and family who need to hear this message of hope. To continue supporting stories like this and gain access to exclusive content, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the Become a Member button below. Every donation helps us continue bringing inspiring stories like this to you. Comment below what your favorite part was and what story you'd like to hear next.